My fellow atheists everywhere have heard this assertion countless times.
So truly, if God does not exist, human beings find themselves in a horrible predicament. Life is ultimately without significance, meaning, value, or purpose.
Actually, you're not positive, Carney. No, you've got a facade. You don't have the joy and the sparkle that I see in those who belong to Jesus.
In the absence of God, all you are is an accident waiting to die. Now, as morbid as that sounds, that's the reality.
That condition of being without Christ is described as having no hope and without God in the world.
According to many religious people, and even some non-religious theists, atheism is apparently hopeless, depressing, and pessimistically nihilistic. It's asserted that either atheism necessitates this dreary outlook, or that atheists are fundamentally incapable of procuring any lasting sense of meaning, fulfillment, or happiness. I've personally had these points thrown at me 1,000 times, but never once has the person asserting them ever cared to ask me if I felt purposeless or depressed beforehand. Given that they have to do with the subjective experiences of atheists, I find their claims pretty presumptuous coming from any theist who hasn't sought out an empirical basis for them, and blatantly dishonest from any theist who has. Let me start out by addressing the idea that not atheists, but atheism itself is hopeless or nihilistic. This is a time where I must make the clarification which atheists have to make all too often, that atheism is just a simple lack of belief in God or gods. It's a singular position on a singular issue. Acting as if atheism entails or demands a certain worldview is just misguided. So, of course, treating atheism as a worldview and stating that it's inherently nihilistic or hopeless is just nonsensical. So, in order to further my discussion of this topic, I'll be addressing the claims that 1. Fulfillment and meaning which promote happiness cannot be found without the belief in the creation of purpose by the supernatural. 2. That life is meaningless without an afterlife, and 3. That atheists cannot and do not lead fulfilled, meaningful, and happy lives. In response to claim 1, I and many atheists like me reject the premise that meaning and purpose are to be found rather than created. What I mean by that is that I think that meaning and purpose are constructs of the mind. It's value assigned to reality by an observer. Does that make meaning and purpose any less real? No. It doesn't matter whether meaning is objective or subjective, the role it plays in our lives is just as impactful. I see the construct of meaning a lot like the construct of beauty. If you see a painting that you think is beautiful, but others disagree, showing that beauty is entirely subjective, does that make the painting any less beautiful to you? Further, are you even able, by sheer force of will, to stop finding beauty in the painting? You created the feeling and idea that the painting is beautiful, but you experience its beauty in just the same way as you would even if it existed beyond your mind. The beauty of that painting will only cease to exist once you do. Meaning is just the same. To address claim 2, allow me to show you a clip from a video produced by Seth Andrews of The Thinking Atheist. It makes the point that I like to share with you beautifully, explaining it more effectively and eloquently than I ever could. This clip is from the video titled Afterlife.
And apart from the lack of evidence of a heaven or hell, there is another problem that the concept of an afterlife has. It is to diminish the value that we place on our lives in the here and now.
An unlimited supply of anything, including life, means that its existence cannot be appreciated. If life is eternal, then there should be no sense of urgency.
Once I began to understand this very point after coming out of my own faith, I actually began valuing the lives of myself and others much more than before. If life is infinite, then why ever value a finite moment? If life is temporary, every moment of it becomes precious. I highly recommend that you watch Afterlife by Seth Andrews, as well as Afterlife is Meaningless Without Afterlife by Dark Matter 2525. They expand upon this topic phenomenally. This is just one way a non-theistic worldview, my own in this case, can allow for the existence of deep, impactful meaning and purpose without entertaining any notions of the supernatural or post-death existence. When I've explained this to some theists, though, it's been met with the rebuttal of, but since the meaning in your life is temporary and subjectively assigned, it just can't be as impactful on you. It just can't feel as real as objective or divine purpose. It's fleeting. It'll never allow you to find lasting happiness. This is claim 3, to which my response is, how do you know? If you're a theist, how can you evaluate what kind of quality of life my personal notion of meaning is capable of promoting? You haven't walked in my shoes, and you certainly can't assert your personal experience over mine. And to prove my point that atheists can find sufficient happiness in their lives, I don't have to assert my personal experience over yours. Because I have data to back up my point. Let's take a look at that, shall we? According to the World Happiness Report, a UN-supported survey of the reported happiness of 155 countries, the top 10 happiest countries in 2017 are Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, Finland, the Netherlands, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Sweden. So if the premise that atheism doesn't allow for a truly meaningful, happy life is true, then we should expect that these countries are populated by very few atheists. After all, if atheists are necessarily unhappy, then a large number of them in any population surveyed would definitely cause the average level of reported happiness to plummet. However, what we actually find is that many of these countries contain some of the largest population percentages of atheists in the world. Research suggests that Norway's population contains more atheists than theists. Denmark's population is 52% atheist or non-religious. Switzerland's is 58% atheist or non-religious, and the Netherlands is 66% atheist or non-religious. And I could go on and on and on. Now, correlation doesn't equal causation. These statistics don't prove that atheism causes greater levels of happiness, but these statistics do invalidate the claim that theists have a monopoly on meaning, fulfillment, and happiness. All it takes to invalidate that is evidence that atheists can be just as happy or happier than theists. This evidence demonstrates that overwhelmingly. So it's pretty easy to show that atheism and happiness are not mutually exclusive. I think that given the evidence presented here, we can accurately say that a claim to the contrary is unjustifiable. But a lot of religious people still say that any non-theistic worldview is depressing, hopeless, and devoid of meaning, and that the prospect of losing their faith is uncomfortable or even frightening. As an ex-fundamentalist, I can tell you that I found the idea of an existence without God absolutely terrifying in its supposed implications of purposelessness. No evidential confirmation could have convinced me that atheists could be happy, or that if I ever became one, that I'd ever experience any semblance of joy again. Understanding why many religious theists think this way is vital to both sides of the discussion in this issue. So vital, in fact, that I thought I could use some assistance in breaking it down for you. Here to help me out is the phenomenal YouTuber Rationality Rules. Take it away, Steve.
Cheers, Drew. It's a pleasure to be on your channel. Thank you. So, I've actually had the fortune, or misfortune, depending on your view, to confront the assertion that atheists have no purpose numerous times, and I'm now fairly certain that I know exactly what it boils down to. Definitions. You see, beneath the fog, when theists assert that atheists have no purpose, what they're really saying is that atheists have no ultimate or divine purpose. Sure, atheists can be happy, experience fulfillment, and create their own purpose. But according to most theists, this isn't real purpose, because real purpose is, and only is, divine purpose. The belief that one has been created with intention to fulfill a certain objective. Now, my first reply to this is a somewhat pedantic one, and it's this. Many atheists do believe that they have a divine purpose, such as Buddhists, because while Buddhists don't believe in a god, which means they're atheists, they do believe that they have a divine purpose, which means they're religious. The point being, of course, is that atheists are not necessarily non-religious. But my second reply, and the more important, is that yes, the non-religious do not have a divine purpose, but neither do the religious. They just assert that they do. Whether we like it or not, the evidence is abundantly clear. We are an evolved mammalian ape, and we are not imbued with a divine purpose. And the fact that many people find this hard to swallow doesn't somehow change this. Look, I appreciate that to someone who's been convinced their whole life that everything has been created with them in mind, that they have a divine purpose, and that when they die they're going to be reunited with their deceased loved ones, that the acknowledgement that this is all nonsense might make them sad or even depressed. But that's only because they've been told that they've won the lottery when they haven't. Realising that their loved ones are mistaken or that they've been lied to isn't an easy thing to accept, and while nothing physical has been taken away, something psychological has. They've planned the rest of their life on the assumption that they're rich, and only now are they realising that they're poor. It's a hard pill to swallow, but reality doesn't offer us a divine purpose, an afterlife, or rewards for our actions. But what it does offer us is the truth, and the beauty is that how we live with this truth is up to us. We define our own purpose, and it's all the more glorious because it's real. Anyhow, before I send you back to Drew, I want to leave you with two quotes. The first is from Ricky Gervais.
I think there's this strange myth that atheists have nothing to live for. It's the opposite. We have nothing to die for.
We have more to live for.
We have everything to live for.
Yes.
and the second is from Darwin. There is grandeur in this view of life.
Thanks, Steve. My former idea of a world without God being hopeless and depressing came from simply never having been exposed to any other viewpoint. Indoctrination, not reason, kept me convinced of that idea, very much to my detriment. Being handed supposedly divine answers at an early age had me skip a basic step in developing a mature, functional view of the world, so of course I thought there was no other way to see things. And once I no longer accepted those answers, I was forced to experience the growing pains I'd previously avoided, and that everyone must experience. But now that I have done the work to create my own purpose and to find happiness in that, I'm much better off. As a final point, I must say, no matter how hopeless or depressing a fact or idea is, its emotional impact on the one who holds it is irrelevant to its truth. God is not made any more existent through your fervent desire of the reassurance of the divine, just as God is not made any less existent through my contentment with the natural. I don't see many theists arguing that point for the existence of God, but I have seen many theists purposely refrain from questioning in preference of their superstition because the prospect of existence without a God was just too frightening for them to bear. To theists who shy away from doubt for this reason, millions of atheists live their lives happily in acceptance of the purpose that they and their loved ones give their existence. In all likelihood, you are just as capable of living a life of fulfillment and happiness without God as they are. I've been in your shoes. I know how scary it looks from the other side, but I invite you to defy your fear, as I and apostates everywhere have done. After a few frightening steps into reality, I think that you'll find that seeking truth only demands temporarily sacrificing your comfort, but not permanently sacrificing your happiness. Thanks for watching. Make sure you head over to Steve's channel, Rationality Rules, to check out his latest content and subscribe. Honestly though, if you're subscribed to my channel but not to Steve's, then frankly, what the hell are you doing on YouTube? He's got some of the absolute highest quality content in the entire community, and you seriously owe it to yourself and to Steve to check it out immediately. Also, I've already collaborated with Steve once before on his channel, so if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check that out by following the link in my end screen. And with that, I've been Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic. You can now support me on Patreon, PayPal, or through my Amazon wishlist, links in the description. You can also subscribe to my channel, and I'll greatly appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter at GMSkeptic, and until next time everyone, stay skeptical.